Welcome to the Lovefly podcast. We have Sorcha Didier.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So, Sorcha is a pilot with Virgin, but I'm going to stop there. You tell us about that. How you end up talking to me and what you do at Virgin and all that sort of stuff.
I'm a pilot at Virgin, as you said. I'm actually a second officer on the A350. This whole journey actually took a very long time to be here. I only wanted to become a pilot when I was about 17, which is actually quite late for most pilots. Most pilots is when they're 5-year-old little boys, really. But yeah, I started when I was 17 and went to uni to do my private pilot's license. You don't have to go
Okay,
through
go
uni,
on,
but
rewind a bit, Sorcha. You don't get away with it. So, what happened at 17 that made you go, I want to be a pilot?
so it's really just totally random. I basically grew up in France and we're in the middle of the countryside, and it was just a random day in summer where because we're in the countryside, we're just near all these fields, and which normally have corn and wheat and that kind of stuff. And just on that summer day they were having a kind of aviation fair, but by aviation fair I mean there was one helicopter and one microlight glider, which consisted of this fair. But I loved roller coasters at the time, and I thought this would be so much fun. Like it might be a little bit similar. It's not at all, but I thought, okay, I'll give it a go on this microlight glider, and I absolutely loved it. I
What,
really, I
really? Even in the microlight? Because that's
yeah, yeah, I mean, you're pretty. It feels like you're outside, but you've got your seatbelt on, etc. We were going along this field, which obviously had loads of holes in it, so we were literally bumping along. But just kept getting more and more excited as we just took up some speed, etc. And then by the time we got to lift off, and my belly just sunk, and I can't describe it in any other way than everything in my head just went quiet, which is really bizarre because obviously the
mm,
motor is quite loud, etc. There's a lot going on, but in my head, it really went silent, and I just felt so at ease and so relaxed. Obviously, I didn't have the controls myself, but I got to look out and just see all the trees and the houses and the people, and it was so freeing, I think, to be
yes.
in the sky and to have nothing around you that's holding you back or holding you down or anything like that, and you literally just have so much freedom, and I just felt so happy, really. And I just wanted to chase that adrenaline, that excitement, that love, really. And it's lasted me the good part of the last 12 years. That's how long it's taken to get into this second officer role at Virgin Atlantic. But yeah,
Wow.
just that little memory,
And
how
that was
one
it. So
memory
that was
can
like
last.
that was like an epiphany, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't tell anyone for the longest time because I thought this is really silly. I don't know any pilots at all. No one in my family's in aviation. And it wasn't until I think I made it known when my grades weren't exactly the best at school. And my dad said, "What do you think you're going to do with this?" And I sheepishly said, "I want to be a pilot." And he said, "You better get your act together." But yeah, so it took a long time initially for that idea to mature in my head, for me to realize that actually
Mm.
this might just be something that I could I could potentially do that wasn't just for everyone else, maybe I can do it if I put enough hard work and effort into it. So
So
yeah.
what age were you when you started your training to be a pilot?
18, actually. It was that the private pilot's license I did the summer that I turned 18, and
Mm.
that was just brilliant. I mean, I must say I did it in a month, so it was quite a
Wow.
sporty, yeah, quite a sporty endeavor. And I just remember being so scared the night before. I really thought, what am I doing? I don't know how to do this. Like, what was I thinking? And then, of course, the nice thing about doing it over a month is that you get just amazing continuity. And
Yes.
so initially, you don't know anything, but you suddenly start to, accumulate all this experience or this knowledge, and suddenly you get to the end and you think, it's only been 30 days and look how far I've come. But yeah,
Amazing.
that was
Amazing.
wonderful. Yeah, it was.
That was it. So it's so interesting, So yeah, literally 17, you have that moment, and then by 18, you got your private pilot's license after doing an intensive month. That's just mad. And then what happened? What happened next?
So I finished uni, and there were sponsorships were already starting to become available, and I knew that I would have to do it. I would either have to pay for it myself and therefore, start accumulate a lot of money. So probably work
Mm,
for it first and then do the training, or I could get on a sponsorship. But I also internally felt that maybe I needed a bit more maturing before I got into that seat. I didn't really ever want to find myself in any of the seats on an aircraft where you're flying hundreds of people and feel like, actually, I need to grow up a bit, or I need to develop more skills,
yes.
regardless of what those skills are. So I felt more comfortable first doing some professional work. So I still worked in aviation, but doing some navigational charts, and that was brilliant because it really introduced me to the world of just, well, the professional world, really. So which does always feel like quite a daunting step when you're 21 or so, but I'm
Yeah, yeah.
so glad that I accumulated all these years of professional work, because I after I did the navigational charts, I went to Virgin Atlantic because I knew that they had a sponsorship. And I thought, let me get in there and just see how it goes, see what the company's like. If I like it, apply to the sponsorship, and I'll be really well placed to understand the company, the operation, long haul, etc., and get to speak to the other pilots that are already in, and who can kind of introduce me to certain things. And that was the best decision, really. It wasn't like a move up, it was a move sideways, but it would open more doors, and it really has, because I haven't left Virgin for the past 7 years. So,
So you
and
went
I've always
did
felt
you go into sort of the flight planning bit then? Is that where you went?
yeah, exactly. I was in what we call navigation services, but it looked after the flight planning system. And I did a bit of flight planning on the side with it as well. So interesting, so good. I mean,
Mm,
even today, when we get flight plans for ahead of a New York flight or whichever destination, pilots will say to me, "What does this mean? Why do the flight planners actually write this? Or what does that code mean?" And it's so nice to actually be able to tell them what it is, or to explain the background to the system, and how it calculates which route is the most optimum to fly. So yeah.
so I guess the pilots don't need to know all the details, do they? Just need to know enough that they trust that you've done your job, and they just need to know that it looks right, and because of their
Yeah.
own training. I guess is that right? Right?
Yeah, so they wouldn't necessarily need to know how has the system come up with this particular route.
Mm,
And whereas when you're a flight planner, you can see, oh, the system is looking at the best route for winds, the best route for navigation fees. There's a lot more that comes into play. Whereas, yeah, the pilots would just see what that preferred route is that's been calculated, and they would just look more at what airfields have been picked as your alternates along the route. What are the weathers? What are the kind of notices that apply to a particular airfield, etc. So it's just different specialities, I guess,
yeah.
between
Would you
flight
mind? I know
planners
we're
and.
going to talk about your piloting. Would you mind just telling me a little bit more about, because this is a question that comes up a lot in the group around, because we've got a lot of weather checkers. Nervous flyers check the weather. They're better informed than the Met Office. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I always say, stop it, because there's people that do that, and so you've been doing that, and I find that really interesting. And the other thing that you kind of mentioned, which I also talk to people about, is the alternate airfields, places that you can go, and how it's plotted, and people will say to me, do they pick routes that avoid the turbulence, or does the turbulence not an issue? So maybe you could just throw those bunch of those questions at you.
Yeah, so we look at a lot of different things. The number one thing is when you're looking at a route will be what kind of airfields are nearby. You always want a route to have really good airfields nearby. For example, if you've got like a medical issue on board or something like that, you need to be sure that the airfield that you could go to in the middle of your route would be a good one to go to where you can land safely and there's a good hospital that can take the passenger off and deal with them. And some of the other items that they'll look at is terrain as well. So there's a lot of terrain when you're going over towards the east. So if you're looking at Shanghai or Hong Kong, those kinds of routes go around a lot of terrain. And if we were to have any issues, we need to think about how can we come down just altitude without going obviously into a mountain. So the flight planning system yeah, yeah.
Ruin your weekend, that
Silence on board. So the flight planning system will also look at your what we call escape routes, which allow you to get away from the terrain and get to a suitable airfield so you can land there safely. I mean, there's a whole host of things, but yes, turbulence is another one as well. The flight planners can see when a bunch of weathers kind of develop, especially over, for example, Africa or just around the equator. There's a lot of thunderstorms and clouds around there, and they will sometimes divert the route or change the route so that pilots don't have to worry about diverting. But we'll always take enough fuel so that we can do the diversions. We would never go into any cloud that looks suspicious. And in fact, on my last flight to Joburg, we had to divert quite a lot because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going into any suspicious cloud. But sometimes, because is slightly near the big clouds, the air has a little bit of turbulence, but it's really nothing to be worried about. I mean, when we look at our systems, we can see nothing's changed. The altitude hasn't changed, speed hasn't changed. Everything looks normal. It's just that we're going through a little bit of a bumpy ride, but we're not in anything bad.
I love that. That's really reassuring. I guess on top of that, then we'll move to back to your career. The other question, just to confirm it, because you've been involved in the planning, is people are often worried about going across large expanses of water, and we talk about being within a sort of minimum flying distance, even with an engine failure and stuff. But I wondered if you could just add a little bit to that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because, I mean, before I did long haul or was involved in long haul operations, I always did think, gosh, those flights that go over, the North Atlantic, and it must be quite scary. You're far away from everything. But actually, now that I've been at Virgin, I'm familiar with the operation. I see that actually the whole flight plan route takes into account different scenarios that might happen and ensures that regardless of what scenario you have, you can still safely land at a nearby suitable airfield. And if you think about certain failures, yes, it's not great and it won't necessarily allow you to go all the way to your final destination, but the aircraft is perfectly safe to land somewhere nearer that's suitable. So actually, I mean, they've done so many studies and checks to ensure that the aircraft could be approved to fly far away from nearby airfields, and everything was fine. So yeah, I'm no longer worried or nervous. And now that as a pilot, I brief the contingencies when we're on board every time that we're approaching oceanic airspace, and we're always discussing, what will we do if this happens? Which direction do we turn? What is the airfield that we are looking to, and what exactly will the procedure be? I feel so comfortable and confident that we could easily land safely nearby and make sure that everyone comes off in one piece as well.
Superb. That's very helpful. Thank you. So you joined Virgin, and then you're kind of sussing it out, and then how did you then you joined the sponsorship scheme? So tell us Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So I actually failed getting onto the sponsorship first.
Okay, move on.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, failed it quite a few times, but every time that I did, actually, I learned so much, and it forced me to continue to grow or continue to develop my skills, so that by the time I my final go and my successful go, I felt much more confident and comfortable. And I actually thought, you know what, if this doesn't happen, then it's okay. I can go. I feel now totally confident and comfortable that I could go and just start my training myself. That's okay, you know. But obviously, sponsorships
Mm.
help from a financial point of view. But
So what was the sort of testing like to get onto a sponsorship scheme? Because they're not so common now, are they? I mean, I know they were.
mhm.
Quite a lot of pilots were lucky enough to either go through the forces or to get a sponsorship. And very few sort of self-starters that I've come across because it's so expensive.
It is so expensive. So the particularity of the Virgin Atlantic sponsorship scheme was that actually once you'd gone through the assessment at the training school, they felt that quite clearly you already have the skills that are needed to be a pilot. But are you a Virgin Atlantic pilot? And
Mm.
so there were two stages to it. The first was going through the training school's assessment. So they did normal hand-eye coordination kind of assessments, maths, group exercises, interview. And then the Virgin Atlantic side of things was basically doing group exercise and an interview in which you had normal interview questions, but also had to present on something that you're really passionate about. So they were really keen to basically figure out who is someone that I can sit next to for 12 hours that makes me feel safe, that would be able to take my family on board, and I would feel like they'll be absolutely fine and really well looked after, and everything that happens on that flight is going to happen safely. And I think it's a really good way of making sure that the pilots that you bring on actually fit the
Mm.
ethos and the values of that company. And you can see it really, because I feel, I don't know about what you think, but I feel like Virgin Atlantic pilots do have a personality, you know, a certain personality. And it's and the way that they ask you to prepare for something, a presentation that you were passionate about, is such a lovely way of just really seeing us for who we are
Yes.
and what we love doing and what we're passionate about. And I think it just shows how much of a people company and business
Mm.
Virgin is. Um,
I love
but
that
yeah.
because you've got obviously you'll have your pilot minimum standards for every airline, and then then the next bit is about could I work with you, and also do you fit the sort of the culture and the mix of the organisation you're going for. You know, in this case, Virgin Atlantic, and I guess probably most pilot schemes in every airline will have their own kind of is this is she or he that
Yeah.
our type of pilot, so I like that.
Yeah.
So that's very I think that's very reassuring for people, so you pass the test, you're a virgin human.
Yeah. Yeah, passed the test and then started what would normally be 18 months of training. But because there were a couple of operational complications, the we had to delay portions of our training along, whether that was to do with because of the training school or what was going on at the time at Virgin Atlantic. I mean, particularly for my course, we were bringing on Monarch pilots because obviously what had happened to Monarch, we were
Mm.
trying to bring people across, and it meant that to train those pilots up, the cadets would need to be held back a little bit. So it would have taken 18 months, but ended up taking about two and a bit years. But we were quite lucky in that during our gaps, we had time to work in the office and deal with certain projects. And that was brilliant because some of the other cadets hadn't worked for Virgin yet. So they got to really understand what it was all
Yes.
about
Yes.
and get involved with some really, really amazing things that, I mean, I personally feel passionate about. We stood up at the old Virgin Atlantic headquarters at the base. We had a day that was for future flyers and future
Oh,
engineers.
nice.
So
Yeah.
we had local children from Crawley that came and that were able to play and see our rigs hall and just how we train our pilots and our cabin crew and get to listen to presentations, which was really fantastic. And we also hosted a simulator at Heathrow, and we got to get young people to sit in the seat and just have a
Oh,
go.
brilliant.
And just amazing. Yeah, I love that we were able to do that. So even though we had some time out of training, it was fantastic, and to try and inspire other people from different backgrounds to come through and hopefully become pilots or engineers. That was really special.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool. So the two bit and a bit years, how's that kind of chunk? So I know how other pilot licenses work because I've looked into it and heard about that. But how does the sponsored program work in terms of how much time do you spend ground school versus in the air and all that? How does that all work?
So we do 6 months of ground school. So that's the same across people who are either sponsored or non-sponsored. So you go through about 14 topics, and it is heavy going. They are difficult subjects. It's just the quantity, the volume is quite intense, but it's not super difficult, so to speak. And then I personally did 4 to 5 months of single engine work. So we were bobbing around New Zealand actually doing that. So that was fantastic. Had brilliant sights, brilliant views. And then the particularity of my course and my license is that we went straight from a single engine Cessna, so quite a small
Yeah.
four-seater plane, to 6 months of simulator, A320 simulator work. So yeah, going from a four-seater Cessna to what in simulator world is what 180 passenger jet was was quite a steep learning curve, but it was fantastic. And it meant that when I came out of my training, I felt really comfortable with the aircraft. And that's what's amazing about my license is you get so much time doing or in being in a sim on the jet that you're going to fly, presumably for life, that actually so much about it, even on your first day. And I remember my training captain on my very first day saying that he was really impressed and that he's noticed that a lot of people coming through with my type of license feel really comfortable in the aircraft right from D-Day. And I thought that said a lot really about how good the training is. And obviously I was in a school that had really good experience with new pilots, etc. So they obviously know how to train us
Yeah.
into pilots from the
So
first day.
Sorcha, I've got to cut in here. So you keep saying my type of license. So I'm curious about that. So how does what you went through differ to the more, well, not traditional or other routes?
So my license is a multi-pilot license, or what we call MPL, whereas you may have heard of other people who've got ATPL, which I
Yes.
think should stand for Air Transport Pilot License. So what they'll have done for ATPL route, the difference is in the final portion of your training. What they've done is after their single engine Cessna work, for example, they've done twin engine real life flying for another maybe 4 to 5 months. And then they have about a month on the jet aircraft in a simulator for the jet aircraft that they're going to be flying in. So they have less time in the jet that they're going to fly in, but they have more time in a real life twin engine.
Yes.
But the real life twin engine that they fly is very different from the jet. Whereas I spent no time on a real life twin engine aircraft, but 6 months on the jet that I was going to fly. So it just meant that I could spend time really looking into the books, feeling really comfortable with all the different buttons, everything that it does, so that I felt capable on that first day, really. But yes, thanks for picking me up on it and
No,
making
that's
sure I
right. No,
clarified.
because I had heard, I knew they were doing something different. I wasn't sure how it worked. And like with anything where there's a slight change, you'll get, people who went through the traditional route. Everyone's route was the best, wasn't it? But you all end up at the same place, don't you?
That is so true. That is so true. At the end of the day, when you've got 20,000 hours, nobody asks you how you got there.
No.
It's just about what kind of different experiences that you have, and the diversity is really what shines through, or what makes a good cockpit. So you're right. It doesn't really matter the way that you go about it. And actually, there's a huge amount of value in doing it the ATPL route, because then it opens you up to more aircraft. Whereas I was tied to a particular aircraft type, which when COVID hit, and obviously a lot of airlines made redundancies, etc., it just made it very difficult to find jobs elsewhere.
So how do you feel about the fact you're tied into Airbus at the moment? That's your type rating, isn't it? So is that all right?
I love Airbus. I really love the
That because you're
aircraft.
French?
Yes, I mean, I've got to side with my country. I feel very European at heart. But yeah, I love the Airbus. I guess it's easy for me to say that because that is the only aircraft that I've flown in real life. Although the Boeing looks really nice as well, I must admit that I like to be very organized in life, and I love the way that in the Airbus aircraft everything is very organized. There's almost like little quadrants or little rectangular boxes for the different systems and the buttons that correspond to the given system. Whereas in the Boeing aircraft, it's a bit more, the locations of the buttons are a bit more diverse.
So basically, it suits your organized streak by the sound of it. It's nice and tidy.
Yeah, but I can really see the advantage of a Boeing aircraft, because you get a lot more of the feedback and the feel for the aircraft. And the Airbus is more what we say point and shoot. So you don't need to move the control column as much, whereas for in a Boeing aircraft, the yoke, you really need to move it a lot to just keep the aircraft stable. But that is nice, because it's more similar to how a single engine or a twin engine aircraft work. You get more of the aerodynamic feel of the aircraft, so it is more interesting, I guess, from a flyer point of view.
Yeah, so you're usually very excited. So you've been out now. When did you finish your training? You were let loose. When did that happen?
I finished in September 2019, and I had 6 months where I was seconded by Virgin to easyjet. So I did 6 months of short haul hops, which was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. There wasn't a dull day. It was brilliant, and you really got your flying skills up very quickly.
Yes.
4 takeoffs and landings in a day. It was brilliant. And then COVID happened. So I took 2 years where I went back into the offices at Virgin, did something completely different, worked in business resilience. But that was a really great opportunity, because I got to be involved in lots of different things, a different side to the business. And obviously, the business resilience role requires, well, really thrives amongst disruption. And that's all that we had during COVID, like many other businesses. So I had a lot of work coming my way. It wasn't a furlough type job, but it was brilliant. I learned so much, and I got involved in things that I never thought that I'd get involved with, between Brexit and, COVID, or crews having COVID down route, or even, looking at Afghanistan and what happened there, or even the political issues in Tel Aviv, etc. a lot of things were impacting our operations, but we managed to navigate through that safely and make sure that everyone was okay, always accounted for, etc. That our flights were able to depart safely. So it was a huge learning curve, but I did love it.
That's I think that's really good because a lot of pilots are so specialized. They go do their pilot thing, and that's what they do, and they kind of miss out on some of the stuff that you've experienced by seeing what goes on in the office and getting to understand all the other things. I think that's really good. It gives you kind of quite a breadth. So I understand that you're heading towards to be the flight ops director, and this is just sort of part of the brilliant pathway, isn't it? No denial.
Do you know, I used to have a very linear kind of mindset to do my with my career, and I remember listening to Carolyn McCall, former EasyJet CEO, and the way that she talked about her career, and she said, I mean, she was a huge advocate of having a squiggly career, and
Mm,
actually that really changed my mind because the way that she explained, I mean, I think she was au pair and nanny in Singapore, and from that to all the way out to what she is now just made me realize that the more opportunities you grab and the more varied your experiences, actually the better you are suited to more things, and the better you can do your job. And that's all that I've ever wanted to do, really. I want to be able to do my job to the best of my ability. So
yes.
what is the next thing that I can
Yeah.
get better at so that I can do that well.
Love
um
that. Yeah, so yeah, that sort of versatility, agile mindset's really coming across. So tell us about what you're doing now then, sort of routes you're doing and all that sort of stuff.
So I've just so in about June, I just started the A350 course to come back into Virgin Atlantic, long haul flying finally. And so I did about 2 months of training and then have been out on the line since then. So I've done a couple of Joburgs and New York. So that's been really lovely, brilliant to finally get to do some long haul and really experience all the things that I was flight planning for before.
Hmm.
And it's been great. Basically in the second officer role, I take over when we get to the cruise portion of the flight. So when people are worrying about going over the Atlantic, I feel comfortable
Sorcha's
because
on it.
I'm the one. But yeah, so I'll just make sure that we've set up the aircraft systems accordingly so that if we ever had anything, we can pretty much press one button and immediately the aircraft will take us there. And we brief on different contingencies, we speak to different air traffic controllers. The same will go, or similar will go when we're going through Africa as well. But you just get passed on to more air traffic control centers, obviously. But that is brilliant. It's quite different and similar at the same time, but you've got different challenges and different
Yes.
simplicities as well. The air traffic control is relatively easy over the Atlantic, but then obviously you're far away from things, so you just need to think about different things and how you would manage any challenges
Yeah,
just
yeah.
on the off chance that it happens, even though we know that the likelihood is so low. You have to be prepared. That I think is this the second role to being a pilot is you be prepared. We're always prepared, always briefing, always thinking about what are the threats, how do I mitigate them, how do I ensure that I'm always
Mm.
staying safe, whatever the circumstances. I remember one of the captains that I flew to Boston with saying that he'd just gone for a jog in the morning, and the first thing he thought was, okay, there's snow on the ground during my jog, so how will that affect my flight later on? So they're always thinking about, how is this going to affect my flight, how can I just make sure that I've
Yeah,
thought about every threat there is and mitigated against it.
I love that. And I think that's very reassuring for people because quite often people will be in the cabin, as passengers thinking, what if, what if, what if? Yeah. And I always to say that's what, when you used to be able to go in and talk to the pilots, you could have said at
Yeah.
any point, where's our nearest suitable diversion? that right now, they'd be able to tell you, because that's what you're doing, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
always thinking about the what ifs and planning and stuff. And it's hard for people to get a sense of that. But yeah, so Sorcha's on it. So just let Sorcha's worried about. She knows about the flight planning. So that they've been signed off. The resilience team, they've been signed off as well, and now she's in the flight deck. And so what's the A350 like? I haven't been on that.
It is beautiful. I've got to say, it is stunning.
They're
It is
proper
so,
posh.
yeah, yeah. And the flight deck is huge. People won't be able to see me, obviously, but I'm 5'2". So I literally love, I mean, I don't need that much space, but there is so much space in the flight deck. It's brilliant. And it's very futuristic in the sense that everything pretty much is all screens, huge screens, some of which are touch screens, which I mean, I personally think it's in an aircraft is incredible. It makes
Mm,
things so much easier. It's getting up with the times really. It's got functions to it which are brilliant. You just talked about what if. The aircraft system actually has a function that is called what if. And so you can
no,
plan,
you
yeah,
made
you
that
can,
up. You made
I
that
know,
up.
I promise. And so we'll actually work
Let's
on,
just pause for a minute. So nervous flies. Listen to that. The aircraft is also catastrophizing. Brilliant.
yeah. So you can just set up the systems to look at different what if scenarios, and you can just plot, okay, if this particular scenario happens, this is the route that I want. How is the aircraft going to take me there, etc.? How much fuel will I have on landing? Okay, I've got plenty of fuel. That means that I feel safe and confident that that is a good, suitable airfield that I can pick for my what if scenario. So it's brilliant.
I'm sure
It's
you're making this up. I love this. You're making it up.
it also has a auto emergency descent function, which
Hmm.
previous Airbuses didn't have, although the A380 might have. But it basically means that if for any reason you have cabin depressurization, or even, for example, if the whole flight deck and cabin becomes hypoxic, which
Yeah,
sometimes means that you're not very fast with your reactions. Just on the off chance that that happens, the aircraft automatically will descend to 10,000 feet where you can breathe again and you can be fine. It just ensures that whatever happens, you will be able to survive
that
what
is
happens,
mad.
even if something really completely out of the ordinary happens. So they're always upgrading aircraft to
Yes.
make sure that it's more and more safe, really. It's brilliant. It has a function that where you can brake just the right amount so that the passengers don't feel like it's forceful, and it will ensure that you brake in just the amount of distance that you want to get off a particular exit from the runway. So it's brilliant because they've thought about safety and they've thought about passenger comfort, which is everything you want really in an aircraft.
That's I love it when I learn something new. That's new. That's new stuff. That's brilliant. What about? I know one of the things that Airbus brought in was, I think they might have it in the newer Boeings as well. Is this thing about when you're going through turbulence, you've got certain settings that you can put. I don't know if I made this up. Maybe I'm imagining it. Pilots used to say, "Well, we just slow down a bit because then it's less bumpy." But I'm sure there's some sort of soft setting. Have I made this up? But I'm talking rubbish.
To be honest, the our procedure is actually, yes, to come back to just make sure that we stay within certain speeds, just to make sure that we've got plenty of margin between overspeeding and underspeeding. But other than that, actually we are told keep the autopilot in and the auto thrust because it can manage the variation in speeds really well. And so actually, even if I think it's probably hard coded, yes, but it's just that the aircraft is really good at maintaining its altitude and speed. And you might see a little bit of a variation, but they're really very small.
Mm.
You yeah.
A couple of random questions then. So have you ever been scared on a flight?
So I haven't necessarily been scared, but had feelings of maybe nervousness or anxiety when I've been sitting in my seat, not as a pilot, as a passenger, and the blinds are down because it's a night flight, for example, and we go through turbulence because you don't know when you're about to encounter or when it's about to end.
Mm,
So it's the anticipation that is the worst, I think. And when you're sitting there in the middle of turbulence, you can't relax because you don't know when it's going to stop. So you're always in that kind of state of high
mm,
alertness.
yes.
Whereas when you're sitting in the pilot seat and you can see when you're about to maybe enter a cloud or something like that, and it looks like maybe there's a little bit of turbulence, it's so much better in a way for your anxiety and nervousness because you can in a way brace yourself for what's about to come. You can see it happening, so you can just think in your head, okay, I'm about to go through turbulence, everything will be fine. And then you go through it and you just feel quite relaxed because that is what your brain
Mm,
anticipated, that it was
mm,
going to be have turbulence. And then when you can see the end of the cloud, then again you can relax because you know it's over, and it basically ensures that you're not in that constant flight, or freeze kind of situation, which I think when you're as a passenger and you can't see what is happening, yeah, it makes it very difficult and easily leads to, I think, anxiety and
mm,
nervousness. But
mm,
in general, it's been because I've felt like I'm not the one who's in control of what is happening. That I think is what is hardest. But
yes.
if there's anything to be said about pilots is that they are constantly trained, regularly go back into the simulator to really make sure that they are suitably trained to handle any event. So at the end of the day, when I remember that as a passenger, that's when I think, okay, I can try and relax into this and just remember that actually, if I think about facts, the pilots are really well trained and they can handle this, and I can just let go of control just for the flight.
Yeah. So that's really good actually, because a lot of pilots who've been on the podcast will say that during turbulence and they're in the cabin, they're not bothered because they know it's safe. And I think so. I get the sense of it's safe, you're not worried about that side of it, but you just don't like the fact you don't know when it's going to end, and weren't expecting it, so you don't have the same information. So in a way, it goes to show that pilots are humans too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, we go through human factors training as well. So I think we talk a lot about stress, flight freeze, etc. And I think sometimes talking about it openly, I mean, the way that your podcast does is a great way of just trying to trying to have a bit of perspective on what's happening inside. We all have those moments where we're overthinking and get just caught like rabbit in the headlights a little bit. And to have these types of podcasts or open forums where you can discuss things, and you realize, okay, I'm not the only one, and actually
Mm.
what what proves that my fear is real, or what disproves my fear. And I think
Nice.
it's good to have different perspectives, and yeah, to talk about it really.
Love that. That's brilliant. So quick question then, another quick question. What's the best bit about your job? What do you love about it?
I'm not gonna lie, since going long haul, I've absolutely loved going down route. It's been brilliant. That's been brilliant. But if I think about the actual flying, the best bit is when you get into a place where the aircraft feels so comfortable, the environment, you're so confident, you've got the air traffic that is talking to you at the same time as you're changing your heading and you're thinking about the next step. is now when I release the passenger seat belts. Okay, now I need to think about the light switches, etc. When you're multitasking and a lot is going on, but it's very controlled because you've
Mm,
trained for this and you've got yourself into a state of flow, if you like. It is the most rewarding feeling. And that is exactly what I think I went into flying for. What I felt when I was 17, that state of that peaceful, that quietness in your head. That is what I love about flying and why I think it will be my forever career, to have that moment where everything comes together and you're able to stay in control, but it's very smooth and just beautiful. You've got the best view in the world, really. So I absolutely love this job. It is amazing. It really is. We're very
oh,
lucky.
that's fantastic. I mean, I think that sounds like it'll keep you going until you become the CEO of Virgin Atlantic. Is that right? President. Uh,
No, no.
is Shy getting nervous?
No, definitely not. From a 5'2", no.
Oh,
No.
absolutely brilliant. Honestly, Sorcha, that was fantastic. There's some really lovely bits there. So I'm just going to ask you for one sort of last message then to sort of say, if anybody that's listened to this, they're scared of flying, what's your sort of your big top tip or thing to think about that might help them? Take your time.
There's a lot of different things. What I would say is actually maybe more suited to any types of fear or stressors, but something that I certainly really helped me during COVID, especially because obviously it was quite nerve-wracking. That I,
Mm,
I was certainly felt very anxious during that time. A lot of things were new, and I was recommended to go cold water swimming, or essentially you can take cold showers. And really, from the first day that I did it, I just remember thinking, I can't do this. What am I thinking? Yeah, I feel really stressed about going into the cold. I feel uncomfortable. But once you put yourself in it, just go for it, just do it, and then come out, you realize that you've just done something that 2 seconds ago you thought you couldn't do. And the more you do that in a really small way, it's just going into the shower and then coming back out, right, with cold water. But that really helped me to have some perspective on my fears and my anxiety. And it gave me a huge amount more confidence in myself and how I can face my fears. Because I think a lot of the people that are listening, flying is all around us, and I'm sure that they've got family members that want to go on holiday but they feel nervous so they can't go. It's really tough, and there's a lot of fear of missing out, etc. But so it's not always something that you can totally ignore, just like most of the fears that we have in life. So I would just recommend to just do it in a small scale, face your fears in a small scale, and you will realize that you can work through it. And the other thing I'd say is talk about it. If you're sitting in an aircraft and you haven't brought a friend or family member, just speak to the person next to you and just tell them, I feel a
mm,
little bit nervous. I'm a
mm,
nervous flyer. I just want to let you know, just in case if I hold your hand in the takeoff, do you mind, etc. Just talking about it, you'll realize that some those people probably also feel a bit nervous. And just sharing it, first of all, will mean that you'll be a little bit distracted. Think of something else. You'll share in something, you'll connect with someone else. So that just naturally makes you feel happier, brings those endorphins back out, and makes you feel understood so that you don't end up internalizing the
mm.
fear and the anxiety, which I think can sometimes just stop us just freeze us completely, really. So that would be my two tips for it.
Yeah, you squeeze another one out. That's fine. It's okay. That was brilliant. Honestly, I can't believe that how quickly that time's gone. I could easily do another hour listening to you, and I'm going to invite you back. You might say no and ghost me, But I think that there's just such lovely normal stuff in there and some really inspiring, helpful bits. And I can't thank you enough for giving your time today. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure. And yeah, thank you very much. So I normally find it so awkward and nerve-wracking talking about myself, but thank you so much for making me feel so comfortable. I genuinely
Oh,
mean
you've
it.
been amazing. You've
Thank
been
you.
amazing, Sorcha, honestly. And I really cannot wish you enough good luck because I want more people like you up in the flight deck. I just think it'd be brilliant. You know, it's like a whole new generation coming through, bringing another slant to it. I love that. So wish you
Thank
all
you
well.
so
And
much.
you know, and I'll let Shy know that he's safe for a little while. Shy's the big boss in Virgin Atlantic, in case anyone doesn't know who he is. Yeah, so I'll let him know. You can relax. Sorcha's all right.
Thanks, Paul.